Joel. Did you know diarrhea is hereditary?
What?
Yeah. It runs in your genes.
Hey, why did the Scarecrow get an award? Actually, don't answer that. The Last of Us Episode 4 continues to keep pretty close to the game while also doing its own thing, and that means ratcheting up the tension as trouble finds Joel and Ellie on their epic and dangerous road trip. Directed by Jeremy Webb, Please Hold My Hand introduces viewers to the newest and most immediate threats to Joel and Ellie's chances of survival, and guess what? None of them are even infected! We're gonna break all that down, plus all of the Easter eggs packed into this episode, but before we jump into all that, we have to warn you, we are about to spoil everything that went down in this week's show, and a few things that happened in the course of the game, so if that doesn't sound appealing, now's the time to fasten that seatbelt and hit the gas before somebody throws a cinder block through your windshield. Okay, now that we're past the spoiler warning, let's get to it. The episode opens with Ellie doing her very best Travis Bickle impersonation, using a mirror to test out how cool she looks with a gun, which, well, we'll come back to that, but it's what English majors like to call foreshadowing. Ellie's doing this while Joel is siphoning gas out of old broken down cars. Right away, we get a cute detail from the games. Ellie gets bored watching Joel not understanding how a siphon works, so she breaks out her book of jokes and starts workshopping some material for Joel.
It doesn't matter how much you push the envelope, it'll still be stationary.
That's actually one of the worst punny little jokes that Ellie tells, but fans of the game will remember Ellie doing this constantly as you're trying to keep clickers from sinking their teeth into Joel over and over again.
A moon rock tastes better than an earthly rock because it's meteor.
Whatever, anyway, she usually works in these moments of casual dialogue in between major sequences, and the show is keeping this tradition going so far as to use the exact same joke book. Though back in the show's universe, Joel seems about ready to crawl out of his own skin when Ellie's doing this because he's been building up these emotional walls because Ellie's youth and playfulness kind of remind him of his own daughter Sarah, who is sadly not really among the titular Last of Us.
Come on, baby girl.
Joel is driving the same truck he got from Bill's garage last episode, and that truck is full of Easter eggs.
This make you all nostalgic?
This is actually before my time.
A big one is that Hank Williams song. Ellie finds a cassette tape in the back seat, and if you're unclear about what a cassette tape is, it's a popular form of media storage used in the late 1900s. Old people used to love them. You could rewind them with a pencil.
You know, that is actually before my time. That is a winner, though.
You know, seems pretty relatable in their situation. On the show, the song being talked about is Alone and Forsaken, which was not only used in one of the trailers for the show, it was also one of the first trailers for the game, and it's also the name of the chapter of the game that's being adapted this episode. So yeah, once again, music, pretty on the nose. Not finished rifling through the contents of the truck, Ellie also finds some spicy reading material in Bearskin magazine, which again is the exact same magazine that appeared in the game. In that case, Ellie stole it from Bill's safe house. Here, she found it in the back seat. I guess it's cool to have porn in your car. I don't know.
Back, that's not for kids.
How do you even walk around with that thing?
Please get rid of it.
Why are all these pages stuck together?
Ellie's reaction to the contents of the magazine, whether real or pretend, are also taken straight from the game, as is Joel's completely uncomfortable reaction in that moment. After driving all day, Ellie and Joel post up in the woods off the road of, actually, I don't know where they are. In the game, they're generally headed towards Pittsburgh at this point, but when Ellie asks Joel where they're headed, he mentions trying to make it to Wyoming, so it seems like they're at a totally different part of the country. Joel and Ellie feast on what Joel calls 20-year-old Chef Boyardee ravioli for dinner. Raviolis contain flour, which of course is one avenue that the cordyceps infection has spread on the show, but it seems like the canned stuff is old enough that it's safe from zombie tendrils. I'm guessing that stuff was sitting on Bill's shelf in his safe house for, probably since the late 1900s. Also over dinner, Joel mentions that this far out from a major city, it's not the infected you have to worry about, it's the people. Basic zombie apocalypse stuff here. The Walking Dead covered this ground really well. At a certain point, the survivors learn to deal with the infected, and it's the living, the uninfected, who are the biggest threats in this specific brand of post-apocalypse.
So what are they gonna do, rob us?
Well, they'll have way more in mind than that.
The next day they break camp and they're back on the road after establishing that Ellie is not a big coffee person.
Smells like burnt shit.
After some prodding, Joel tells Ellie about his brother Tommy, who thinks of himself as a hero. Joel calls him a joiner. Tommy convinced Joel to join a group that made their way to Boston, which is where they met Tess. Anyway, this group that Joel is talking about is not the Fireflies because Tommy didn't join the insurgent group until after meeting its leader, Marlene, who we, the viewers, met a few episodes ago. But nowadays, Joel has heard that Tommy has quit the Fireflies, he's all alone out there in Wyoming, and now it's up to Joel to go get him. Joel says that you keep going in a world like this for family and pretty much nothing else, and Ellie, she's not quite family, but she's cargo that he promised Tess he would deliver, and Tess was like family to him, so she's like family by proxy, or at the very least, precious cargo. There's still a bunch of driving to be done, so Joel tells Ellie to grab some shut-eye on the way, and that leads to our next Easter egg from the game.
I'm not even tired.
And once again, this is the show adapting a beat pretty much exactly the way it happens in the game, which is really cool about this show. You know, obviously they're making some changes, but have we ever seen a show or movie translating a game this closely before? And, you know, sure, this joke has been made plenty all over the internet by now, but the most unrealistic thing about the game is that Joel has not been killed numerous times over by clickers, and there hasn't been nearly enough rooting around in drawers looking for rubbing alcohol and broken scissors so you can craft items and health kits. But I digress, back to the drive. Ellie wakes up as Joel reaches a city. Which city? Well, we'll get to that. In the game, they make it to Pittsburgh. We already know that they are nowhere near Pennsylvania at this point. There's some freeway signage there, and if you enhance, well, you'll see that Interstate Highway 35 has one way heading towards Wichita, Kansas, and another heading to Des Moines, Iowa, and a third heading to the downtown area of Kansas City, Missouri. Yep, that's right, Kansas City, not actually in Kansas. How many people learned that from this episode? Be honest, sound off in the comments. Anyway, Joel pops out to assess the situation to give a good ocular pat down, if you will. The road is blocked, not willing to go all the way back around the blockage. Joel says,
Screw it.
Screw it.
and of course that's another line straight out of the game, and also continuing with the running theme in the show of, gluten and flour being deadly. Please note that the tunnel is blocked by a Sara Lee bread truck, which seems like a pretty fun little nod there, or really counterintuitive product placement. Joel's plan is to zip around the blockage and get back on the road quickly, and honestly, it's kind of a miracle, or at the very least convenient writing, that it's taken this long for them to have to take a detour. They drive around a bit as Ellie struggles to read a road map, which is pretty relatable. I mean, you know, how screwed would you be if your survival depended on reading a road map without GPS? Because I'm willing to bet we'd all be like a little bit screwed by this, and by we, I mean pretty much everybody under 40. I know there are exceptions, but let's be realistic. We've all gotten very dependent on smartphones. They drive past a big pile of burned human bones, which has to be a bad sign. Also a bad sign?
Is that the QZ? Where the is Fedra?
This is all very disconcerting, but before they can get too worried about it, we make it to the ambush sequence, and if you played the game, you know exactly how this goes.
Are we gonna help him?
No.
Well, what about the guy?
He ain't even hurt.
The sequence plays out pretty much the same in the show as it does in the game, despite taking place in a different city. And this time around, instead of getting broadsided by a different vehicle, the truck takes some damage and then Joel crashes through a storefront. The shootout that comes after employs a bunch of familiar video game imagery, you know, Joel shooting from cover and hiding from enemies and all that.
Stay down, you stay low, you stay quiet.
Yep, and tap circle to crouch and hold R1 to listen. Yeah, I know, we played the tutorial. Without having to restart a checkpoint even once, Joel seemingly kills all of his attackers, but after it seems like he took everyone out, one last guy jumps out and surprises Joel and starts giving him the business, and it looks like he's gonna win, and then... Remember that foreshadowing in the beginning of the episode? It was for this. Ellie shoots the dude in the back with her top secret handgun, saving Joel. It's almost like if you show a gun in the first scene, it's gonna come into play at some point later in the story. It's like some kind of rule or something. What comes after this is pretty dark. The wounded attacker, who identifies himself as Brian, complains that he can't feel his legs, and he pleads with Joel to spare his life, and Joel politely declines.
No, we can just stop. We can just stop. Mom!
Okay, so one way the game flips the script is by making you realize that the dude you're playing as might be a sympathetic character, but he's not a good person, or at the very least his morals are an extremely gray area. In the game, he, which is to say you, the player, kills hundreds of people, but the show has taken a more nuanced approach for, I guess, obvious narrative reasons. You could argue that Joel is taking mercy on this guy and putting him out of his misery because he was probably going to bleed out anyway, but you could also make the case that he's covering his and Ellie's tracks by any means necessary. The point is that Joel is a dude who does not skip a beat when it comes to taking a human life. You beat a guard to death with his bare hands in the very first episode, and now this. I'm just saying, keep an eye on this guy. So as Joel and Ellie sneakily put some distance between themselves and the spot where Brian was put to rest, the show shifts its point of view, introducing us to Kathleen, played by Melanie Lynskey, who is a brand new addition for the show. Kathleen is having a heart-to-heart with her doctor. She wants to know the location of a guy named Henry, a name that should ring a bell if you played the game.
Henry Burrell. Okay. You know where Henry is.
Apparently, this Henry is the reason that Kathleen's brother is dead, and Doc knows where Henry is, but he's not telling even when Kathleen puts a gun to his head. Kathleen gets interrupted with the news that Brian is dead, that's the guy who Joel just killed, and she's upset about it, and this guy Perry, who's played by Jeffrey Pierce, tells her that they think outsiders killed Brian.
Who did this?
We think it was outsiders. We found a truck loaded.
Quick little Easter egg here, Jeffrey Pierce is the actor who plays Joel's brother Tommy in the game. In the show, he's played by Gabriel Luna, and they got Jeffrey playing someone else. I wonder what other actors from the game might show up in this show. When it's clear that neither Brian nor his NPC teammate would survive, Kathleen addresses her anger by making sure that the doctor doesn't either. Addressing a crowd of survivors, Kathleen blames the killings on Henry, the same guy she just executed the doctor for protecting, and the same guy who allegedly got her brother killed. Of course, we know full well that Henry had nothing to do with Joel and Ellie coming into the city, unless he was the guy who crashed that Sara Lee bread truck, which seems pretty unlikely. The point is, Kathleen is using the situation to rile the crowd up against this Henry guy.
Find who did this. Find every collaborator and kill them all.
Doesn't really seem like anybody's interested in discussing the nuance behind why Joel and Ellie are in the city in the first place, because they just roll out Mad Max style to go carry out Kathleen's orders. And they really do. They start busting down doors looking for whoever killed Brian. And then we cut to Joel and Ellie holed up in a shuttered bar called the High-Low. As Joel sneakily watches what's going on, Ellie mentions that the group aren't Fedra and they aren't Fireflies, so who are they?
People.
Joel knows that they're not going to be safe for long in the bar, so they're going to wait until things quiet down, and then they're going to head out. But for now, Joel and Ellie check in on each other after their harrowing ordeal.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
Joel feels bad for letting Brian get the drop on him because that meant that it fell on Ellie to protect him.
You're just a kid.
He considers it his fault and that Ellie shouldn't have had to shoot at all, and he stammers out an awkward apology before Ellie wipes her eyes and lets him know that Brian wasn't the first time that she's had to unalive somebody.
It wasn't my first time.
This of course happens in the game too, but the interaction is a lot more tense between the two, with Joel almost scolding Ellie, which is something that she understandably takes exception to.
How about, hey, Ellie, I know it wasn't easy, but it was either him or me. Thanks for saving my ass.
The point is, in the show version, Joel seems more prone to blame himself than to blame Ellie. After learning all this, Joel pulls out the handgun and starts working with Ellie on what she knows about how to use it.
Show me your grit.
In this sequence, Ellie informs Joel, and by extension us, that what firearm training she got from Fedra school. Joel tells Ellie to put the gun in her bag, advice that she immediately disregards, and they get moving again. Checking back in on Kathleen, who's still very much wearing her not fucking around face, when Perry hits her with an update. They think they found a trail. He leads her to an attic that we haven't seen before, and there's some empty canned food up there along with some child's drawings of superheroes. Joel and Ellie did not leave this mess. Henry did, and the kid's name is Sam, and again, that's no surprise if you played the game. Kathleen notes that they're out of food and that Henry would not let Sam starve, so she orders Perry to post more guards near the provisions. Henry's close, and she can feel it.
Double the guards around our provisions. He's f***ing close. I can feel it.
Next on the agenda, Perry takes Kathleen downstairs to a not at all dark and foreboding basement area where they find the concrete floor has caved in and it's moving around like that there's something under there that can feel them. They bail out pretty quick, which suggests that they know exactly what this is, and Kathleen orders a bewildered Perry to A, not tell anybody about this, and B, seal off the building for now. He agrees, but it's pretty clear he thinks this is a bad idea. And that begs the question, what is this thing in the basement? Is this evidence of a bloater or a rat king or some kind of new horrible monstrosity? Let us know what you think in the comments. There's a shot in the trailer of a bloater and a bunch of runners climbing out of what looks like some kind of a hole in the ground, so it could be related to that, but based on Kathleen and Perry's reactions to it, pretty good bet that it involves the infected in some way or another. Back to breaking and entering with Joel and Ellie. They make it to the tallest building in the middle of the city, which is like 45 stories high, and Joel wants to go all the way up to get an overhead view of the city.
How far?
As far as I can make it.
Why didn't they use the elevator, you might ask? Well, in the game, they actually try to do that, and based on how that worked out, probably better for them to go on foot. As they're climbing, Ellie asks Joel how he knew not to hesitate and run down that ambush decoy. Well, the line, "I've been on both sides," kind of implies that Joel himself had been involved in some, carjacking capers like this during the 20 years between losing his daughter and meeting Ellie. Ellie follows his question up, asking if he'd ever killed any innocent people, and Joel's non-answer kind of lets us know that, yeah, he absolutely killed some innocent people, and he really doesn't want to talk about that right now.
Did you kill innocent people?
Come on.
Well, they finally make it to the 33rd floor before Joel collapses, and Ellie tells him to get off his lazy ass.
56 years old, you little
After they make camp for the night, Joel sprinkles down a bunch of broken glass all over because he doesn't want people sneaking up on them while they're sleeping. As they lie there in the dark, Joel asks Ellie about her first kill, and now she's the one who doesn't want to talk about it. So Joel tells her that she doesn't have to and adds that it's not fair that someone her age should have to experience something so heavy. She responds basically by letting him know that she knows that he has hearing loss on his right side, and just to keep things from being too much of a downer, we get a funny poop joke. Nice way to break the tension, and that's how day one of Joel and Ellie's field trip to Kansas City comes to a close, and surely nothing's gonna happen to them, and they're safe and sound in this high-rise with glass sprinkled all around them, right? No, of course not. What kind of a show do you think this is? The episode ends with Ellie waking Joel in the middle of the night. The glass did not work. They're being held at gunpoint by two survivors, one much younger than the other, and that's the last thing we see at the end of this episode. And of course, this is leading into episode 5, where we're gonna meet Henry and Sam, who are holding Joel and Ellie up in the middle of the night. They're the ones that Kathleen's all upset about. In the game, Henry and his brother Sam are two survivors who got stuck in the city with a larger group after venturing in to find supplies. Henry tells Joel that their main goal is to just escape the city. Spoilers, but they eventually do make it outside the city, but Sam gets bitten along the way, and he hides it at first, and then Henry's the one who has to put him down before taking his own life. It's really dark stuff. Last episode, the HBO show gave us a nice happy-ish ending to Bill and Frank's side story, so maybe we'll get, a happy ending for live-action Henry and Sam, but we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, Henry and Sam are the ones who are gonna help Joel and Ellie get out of the mess that they're in. The cliffhanger positions them as threats, what with the guns and everything, but they got off on the wrong foot with Joel and Ellie in the game too. So looking ahead to the 5th episode, Endure and Survive, there's a lot of setup for the show to deliver on. We got Joel and Ellie being held at gunpoint by Sam and Henry, who Kathleen is on the warpath to find. Meanwhile, whatever's buried in the basement sure as hell does not want to stay buried, so we're gonna find out what happens next week. What did you think of The Last of Us Episode 4? What's the thing in the basement? Is it clickers? Maybe just termites? Are Henry and Sam gonna help or hurt Joel and Ellie's epic road trip in Kansas City? And with the owner of a Sara Lee bread truck, please move your vehicle, you are double parked. Sound off with your craziest theories in the comments below. Thank you for watching this episode of Cannon Fodder. I'm Max Scoville. If you're looking for more Last of Us to sink your teeth into, check out our review of the whole season, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch. We'll see you next week.
Why did the Scarecrow get an award?
Because he was outstanding in his field.